are listening to Inside Voices on WNHHLP 103.5 FM.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Inside Voices. My name is Georgia Goldburn, and I am the Director of Hope for New Haven, as well as the co-founder of Circle. And I'm joined today by Miss Sandra Dill, and I want everybody to know write that name down because you are going to be hearing so much more about this young woman here in front of me that's going to be steering policies and the system for early care and education. Miss Sandra, welcome to Inside Voices.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. So, Sandra, do you want to just share with folks who you are and what your role is both as a provider and as I guess you're going to be a thought leader in this work.
Yes, my name is Sandra Dill, and I'm a family home child care provider, and I'm also an early Head Start provider. I've been in the business for 15 years. My program is located in New Haven, Connecticut. I started when my grandchildren were 5 weeks. They will be 16 this year.
Wow.
And as they were growing up, they wanted me to call it grandma school, but it's motherly love too, family child care. Um, and I also serve on the ECE Endowment Board Advisory Board, representing and advocating for all providers.
And more specifically, you are the voice of the family child care providers on the
Yes.
board. And for the folks who aren't aware, Connecticut created a fund, and we've discussed this in previous episodes, but Connecticut created a child care endowment fund. And this past legislative session, they infused that fund with about $300 million. And the vision and the hope is that that fund will be able to fund all of the different programs in Early Start and in Connecticut. And Early Start is one of the initiative that will be primarily funded through the endowment. And so there were several folks that were selected to be a part of the advisory group and just to um, give advice and consent to some of the ways in that they are going to spend this 300 plus $1 million to invest in early care and education in Connecticut. And Ms. Sandra, you were selected to be the family child care rep on that endowment board. We're gonna jump into that a bit further in our conversation, but before we go, we want to get a sense. You mentioned that you started this work some 15 years ago in response to you being a grandmother. So share with the audience a little bit about that journey.
Well, it was an interesting journey because I first wanted to do childcare even before they were born when my children were little. And I was living in an apartment, and my landlord wouldn't allow it. So, fast forward, I ended up buying my own home, you
Mm.
know, worked in the corporate world. It's like, I don't think this is for me anymore. Because deep down inside, I still had that passion to do childcare, but I just didn't know when and how it was going to happen. And so I ended up buying the property, getting licensed, and here I am.
So when you decided to buy your home, was that with the full intention of becoming a family childcare provider, or that came later on?
It came later on, but it was intentional because I knew if I had my own property, I could at some point become a provider.
And so when you bought your home, you didn't immediately become a provider, it sounds like.
No, no, it was, I want to say 10 years later.
Wow.
Yeah, because there was work that needed to be done. Even when I applied for licensing, you have to go through the inspection.
Mhm.
And so because my home is built in 1924, there was some lead abatements that needed to be done, and we were able to get a grant from Hartford to get all of that done. And
Mhm.
so yeah, it really worked out, but it didn't happen as soon as I bought the house. I was still out there in the corporate world, 9 to 5. Well, I kept
Doing your
saying,
thing.
this is not for me.
Yeah, so obviously the birth of your grandchildren was sort of like the spark to get you to kind of move.
Yes.
It's so like the journey of so many family childcare providers. So can you talk and share a little bit about how that conversation started and how that action followed?
Yeah, well, it's a good thing that my daughter got pregnant during the time that she did because I was licensed, but I was still working in the corporate world because I wasn't sure financially when to start, you
Mm.
know. But a funny story is that pushed me is that my husband won $25,000 on the scratch off.
Wow.
So that was my push. It's okay to. And so, I went on and started, and then my daughter got pregnant, and it was like, we're going to take care of these babies.
So how many children did you start with? Was it just your
I
grand?
only started with the two of them.
Okay. And
Hmm.
how did you grow to become to take on more children?
I would say word of mouth because I have young children who has lots of friends,
Mm-hmm.
and I grew up in this community. Like I grew up on Whaley Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's kids that grew up here and they're like, "Oh, Miss Dill, I remember when you used to take me to school and I don't remember, but they remember me." So as they grow and become parents, they know that, oh, Miss Dill has a daycare, and a lot of them are my kids' friends. They went to school with, their co-workers. So it just kind of started growing from there. And also, when I left the hospital, there was, let me go back. There was a parent who was working there who needed care, and I had told her that I was starting. So her child entered into my program also.
Okay, so you were working at the hospital?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So many of the providers, when I interview them for, and kind of ask them about their background, it is so surprising because people have an idea of who family childcare providers are. And what I love about, meeting and talking to individual family childcare provider is they have such a rich history
Mm-hmm.
and a rich background. But the the journey to this place is always the same. They either
Mm-hmm.
had children, and they decided, I wanted to stay at home and take care of my kids, or
Yes.
they decided that, I'm going to switch out of either corporate America or do something different, or, instead of being an educator, run my own business. We know that you had that passion all along for you. And
Mm-hmm.
you started, again, as you say, with your grandchildren, and then you started to grow. When you started only with your grandchildren at the very beginning, because I think there's so many people who probably will start to think about doing their own family childcare business. What was some of the experience? Because you mentioned money being a factor in doing this. How did money kind of play a role, or how was the economics when you just started this journey in becoming a family childcare provider, especially with just two children?
Yeah. Well, like I said, the money that my husband won was a big help. My daughter also qualified for Care for Kids. And plus with me, what helped too is I have rental property. So
Mhm.
that extra income sort of helps sustain me, but I still had to get more kids in here.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
at the very beginning, obviously the daycare wasn't covering the full cost.
Oh, not at all. Not at all.
And so, Sandra, you've been around to kind of see the evolution of care. And again, some of those things you are going to bring, some of those experiences you're going to bring to the endowment, obviously. But if someone were to spend like a day at Motherly Love too, because that's the
Mhm.
name of your family childcare business, what would they understand about your approach to care? So if
Okay.
somebody were to say, okay, I'm going to come in, I'm going to spend the day either being pretending to be a child or just being an observer, what would
Mhm.
they understand about your approach to care?
Okay, so I would say the first thing that they would understand about our approach to kids is that every child feels a true sense of belonging. Like, I should be here. This is a great place to be. So children will feel safe, valued,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll feel free to be themselves in this environment.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like I'm home but away from home.
Yeah.
Okay. And we encourage independence by allowing them to make choices while also supporting their individual needs through daily parent communication and observations.
Mm-hmm.
So parent communications is very crucial to me, being able to build that trust with the parents. And we
Why is
just
that? Why
create
is that? Why is that crucial to you?
because when you think about it, parents are dropping their children, like if they don't know me, off to total strangers. Like you may have heard of me, but you've never engaged with me. You don't really know what goes on here. All you know is my child is in this program. I'm taking them. So to build trusting relationships, it not only helps with communicating with the parents, but it helps as far as me providing care for the children,
Mm-hmm.
because then they begin to share as the trust builds and grows. Parents begin to share things that they wouldn't normally share to a stranger, but
Mm-hmm.
because you no longer have become a stranger, but somewhat of a partner
Yeah.
in helping me raise my child, then they build up this confidence in you. And to me, that's like really important, you know, because if a parent is allowed to share something that's going on in their life that could be affecting their child,
Mm-hmm.
it's up to me as a woman of integrity to keep it here, but
Mm-hmm.
yet support her in whatever way I could.
So then, obviously, your approach to care also centers on parents as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So talk about, because I'm sure everybody started out thinking about care and education, what they want for the children. How did you get to that place of fully understanding that care and education encompasses parents? What was there something in your experience that caused you to understand how crucial and critical it was to build that?
Yes. I can I can think of an example um, of a parent who she knew my children, but she didn't really know me.
Mm-hmm.
And but because of our me communicating and you know um, mutual respect for one another, she began to share some issues going on with her child,
Mm-hmm.
and I was able to support her by giving her advice because I used to work in pediatrics. So I worked with children. So there's some things that I just can normally pick up by
Mm-hmm.
being in that environment, working in pediatrics. I worked in pediatrics in the doctor's office for 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so sh by us communicating, we were able, this child, long story short, just this child ended up getting surgery that they so desperately needed. And by the mom being like a new mom, she wasn't aware of what was actually going on with the child. So I always think, had she been one somewhere else or had not anybody advised her, how long would it have taken for the results for this child to get the medical care that they needed? young, you know. So
Yeah.
by communicating and building that relationship, we were able to work together, and her child had the surgery, doing much better, but as a provider, when you observe, you pick up these things
Mhm.
and you share it, go back and share it with the parents. Now, some parents aren't as responsive. Some aren't, but she
That.
was.
And based on my experience of being a provider, I can understand. But what has your experience been with parents who are not responsive? What are some of the things what's going on with that particular parent or in the lives of that parent that you believe makes them less responsive to hearing some of these feedback?
I think, Georgia, a lot of it is their lifestyle.
Mm,
What's going on at home. There's a lot, parents have a lot of struggles, a lot of issues, and sometimes they feel like if they share them, they'll be judged.
mm,
But little do they know that we went through some of those same issues and those
mm,
same struggles that they're going through today. And so I have parents who are, and it's like a slower process. You got
mm,
to really be gentle and take your time. And even when things aren't going the way they should, you have to maintain your, you know, I don't know what word to use, but your commitment to them,
yeah.
even though, they should be doing something different concerning the child.
Mm.
But,
You mentioned that you grew up in on Whaley Avenue and that you grew up in the community. And there's so many conversations that is occurring around culturally responsive care, right? And you mentioned some of the parents are slow to come out because they feel like they're being judged. Do you think you are helped with these parents because they know that you grew up in their same environment and that you share some of their same experience as a Black woman, growing up in this country, in this world, in this city? And
oh,
talk
yes.
about how you see that playing out.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because it was a struggle for me at one point in my life. It was really hard. And so I shared those experience with the parents. And I also, I support them. And I also try to guide them to resources that I may not have had, but they have today.
Mm.
Because back in the day, there was nowhere near as much in my 20s as they have today.
What are some of those resources that you can point?
Even with Care for Kids,
Mhm.
I don't know, I had to figure out, okay, when did Care for Kids, like, it's been like 30 years. I said, okay, then there was a time in my life there was no Care for Kids because my kids go back 30 years. There was no Care for Kids. I don't recall any organizations even like Circle,
Mm.
how a network of women supporting one another in the industry. I didn't know anything about that, or Birth to Three even, you know. Yeah, it's just that, and that's why I think it's so important that we educate the community to let them know what is out there, what resources they have and can utilize to best support their families and their children.
Yeah. So, all of the research points clearly to a preferred setting, which is a family child care setting,
Hmm.
for many parents of young children. Do you feel that, are you getting that feedback from parents when they come to you as a family child care provider that for their young children, that this is where they want to be rather than in a center-based program?
Well, I think I've only experienced so far one family that came from center base, and it wasn't because of the care, it was because of the the fee. the
Mm,
amount they had to pay. You know, it wasn't because of the care, it was because of that. And so, but with family, if I could compare, you know, for me with family child care providers, when an infant comes into my program, if I start them as an infant, they could stay here from infancy to 3. They could go on to early pre-K 3 or pre-K 4 or stay till kindergarten.
mhm.
So there's a continuity. They never change providers. The space doesn't change. I may change what goes in the space, you know. Um, so I get to follow this child's development for a couple of years. And you can pinpoint a lot of things where, and it's good for the child because some centers, you have your infant toddler room, you may have your 2 to 3, or you may have your 4 to 5. And then you have a set of teachers here, a set of teachers, and another set. So as the child grows, they're rotating from each room. But in
Mhm.
family home, it's continuous,
Mm,
that one provider. And I think that's what helps build also the family relations because the parent, you know, you've been taking care of my child for 3, 4, 5 years. You know, we've become friends now,
yeah. And you know, Sandra,
but they're
that
both very valuable.
yeah, I know that intuitively because in our center we focus on you know that continuity of care that you're talking about, making sure that children stay in a particular classroom
Hmm.
for a set period of time, that you don't have teachers rotating in and out.
Hmm.
But yeah, just so I understand that on a conscious level, but I never until you just mentioned it, it just never clicked in my head that yeah, you have providers who are with children. I mean, we get that experience as centers because we do see them grow, but your experience and their experience with a family childcare provider is very different because they're there with them the
Hmm.
whole time. So
The
you do
whole
become like
time.
a parent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so cute. Sometimes they don't want to leave. You know, and I start preparing them. It's so funny. I'll tell my 3-year-olds because I'm early Head Start. And so when they turn 3, they move to pre-K 3 and 4. And I tell them, I say, you got to get ready for the big girl school, the big girl school. And one of them called me Godmommy. They said, Godmommy, we going, I'm going to go to the big girl school. I said, okay, you're ready to kind of get them ready to know that you're going to move. Because some of them, they literally want to come back,
Yeah.
you know, but, you know, you want them to get out there and be around children more their age and just get out into the real world of education, even at a young age.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you're a Head Start provider, and I know for many folks who are, you know, not initiated into this world, they would not imagine Head Start actually occurring in a family childcare setting. So can you just share with us how you became a family childcare
Yes,
provider, early Head Start? Are you early Head Start or a Head Start?
early Head Start.
Early Head Start. So first, let's explain the difference to folks between early Head Start and Head Start.
Yeah. Well, early Head Start, the ages are infancy to 3.
Hmm.
And I guess Head Starts could start at 3 to 5, maybe. So with early Head Start, we bring in children at infancy. We educate the babies
Hmm.
while they're babies because babies can learn.
Yeah.
So we're early, that's why it's early Head Start. We start educating them at a very early age.
Hmm.
And their brains are developing, they can learn. And I feel like that's why it's so important for us as providers to continue our professional development and our education so we'll know how to educate these children in their developmental stages.
So these are two different, so these are like funds. And, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned that you're a Head Start provider because those are some funds that are, those are funds that come directly from the federal government.
Yes.
Right. And those are possibly being threatened right now by the administration.
Hmm.
So, how are you internalizing some of the national conversation that's going on about childcare funding. And are you as a provider feeling stressed as an early Head Start provider about these funding? Because Head Start essentially is just a federal funding source that helps
Right.
pay for childcare. So how are you feeling as a provider hearing these conversations going on at the federal level?
Um, Honestly, I'm feeling okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That that's
I don't, yeah, I don't, yeah, I do know why, but I'm not worried, you know. Um, I'm really not. And I keep saying to myself, should I be? But I'm not. I'm not really worried. I feel like God will sustain me no matter what goes on,
Mhm.
and that motherly love too will be all right. So I can't say that I'm worried.
Wow.
I'm more concerned about care for kids.
So talk about that. Talk about that concern.
Yeah, the care for kids is threatening a lot of businesses because of this wait list. And, parents are have to quit jobs,
Mhm.
not able to get jobs. And then that brings about a lot of stress.
Yeah.
So now there's stress in the home. So the
Yeah.
parents are stressed and the children feel the stress. So it's a big issue that needs to be resolved. And I know the endowment form did help us out some.
Hmm.
They did. They heard the voices of the people.
Yeah. And let's jump into that because, you talk about the fact that you as a Head Start provider aren't as worried, but you're worried as a Care for Kids provider. So I imagine that those are things that shape your perspective when you're on the endowment board. So how do you bring those how have you brought those concerns to
To
the
the
other folks on the endowment board? And do you feel that they have been receptive? You mentioned that they heard the cry and the appeal, but
hmm
you're behind the scenes, Sandra, I'm assuming. Right.
Yeah, I
So talk
am.
about how do you bring that perspective? Because your role on the board is to bring the perspective from the family childcare provider in this space. So,
Yeah. So to bring real life experiences actually,
mhm,
to let them be aware of what's really going on the ground.
yeah.
You know,
Have you
parents are
heard from other,
struggling.
what have you heard from other family childcare providers as it relates to care for kids?
That they can't get anyone in their program. I know one girl, one provider, she doesn't have anyone.
Mm,
She has no children, and she just bought a house.
wow. Is her house the space of her business? Is that
Mm-hmm.
it is?
Yeah.
And was she a provider before?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's really changing like people's ability to continue
Yeah.
to deliver care. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you bring that? What does that put a particular weight on you as a part of the endowment board?
Mm, I don't know if I would say it's a weight,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a concern.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real concern. Um, because it's sad to think it's providers could become homeless.
Wow.
You could become homeless if you can't pay your rent.
Or your
So
mortgage.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And especially a single woman.
Mm-hmm.
That's your only source of income. That makes it twice as bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you just talk or give some insight into how the board has responded? Have there been conversation that the endowment board has had based on the concerns that you're seeing on the ground and what folks have testified to in the December public testimony?
Well, there hasn't been much around the table, but the they did hear the testimonies. Um, and that's like I said, how, the stabilization funding that was not in the budget.
Mm,
But after those testimonies, it got put in the budget. And it kind of threw me a little bit because of the testimonies, I was looking for the change to come to care for kids. I
mm,
was looking for this drag. Okay, no more wait lists. But I see it's like, no, Sandra, it's in the stabilization. We're going to give some money to help these people to not close their businesses.
mhm. So I know that they probably, well, one, the endowment board, as you know, Miss Sandra, that they're not going to use the money, and they can't use the money to fund Care for Kids.
No,
Um,
no,
right. So the stabilization was the best path to go.
right.
But do you think that the state has a responsibility still to fund outside of the endowment? Do you think
Absolutely.
it's critical?
Yes,
Explain. Yeah, with the stable,
absolutely.
so the state may think, well, the stabilization dollars will be, a good start, but why do you think it's critical to still continue to fund Care for Kids?
It's a start because everyone's not going to have access to those funds.
Mm,
Everyone's not going to have access to the stabilization funding. So the provider who, whatever, for whatever reason, doesn't qualify, um, her application doesn't get processed or whatever, she's still going to be in the same boat.
yeah.
So it's like I heard the parent advocate say, at the board meeting, it's fine, but he said something needs to be done now. Like people are in trouble like now, today, And so I totally agree with that because just like the CT Early Start, everyone's not going to get that funding right now.
Yeah.
And there are providers, it's sad to say, that are just not positioned to receive it.
Expand on that.
Because right now there's first of all, if you have your business, you need to make sure you are running your business properly as a business.
Hmm.
Everything needs to be your T's need to be crossed and your I's need to be dotted. Okay. And now educational wise, there's so many requirements, so many credentials. You need to be accredited. You need your CDA. You need degrees. Are you in a position where you can even work towards this? There's language barriers, there's financial barriers, just not knowing the information. Some providers don't even know what's going on.
So, that's a perfect segue to talk about Circle and your membership in Circle. Because Circle does help with a lot of those things. So, talk about how you found out about Circle and what Circle has been and how Circle has really addressed some of the concerns that you just mentioned.
Okay, so I found out about Circle through Miss Queen. She lives down the street, and it was during COVID.
Mhm.
It was during COVID. And so that's when I joined, and I was like, wow, the first thing that impressed me was the commitment to these women being on every Saturday. I mean, who gives up their Saturdays? I was like, this is like cool. Who gives up their Saturdays? But and and you were so like you helped us so much. The circle helped providers by, we had masks and sanitizers, you did everything that was in your power to do to make sure that we were safe and the children, if we had children during that time in our care, that they were safe.
Mhm.
And also kept us updated on any type of funding that was out there and available for us.
Yeah.
And also, I've learned through Circle that collective advocacy is vital for providers because it amplifies our voices and ensures our needs and challenges are heard. And that was proven at the listening session,
Yeah.
you know. It was proven at the listening session. And because, like you always say, alone, it's easy for our concerns to be overlooked.
Hmm.
But together, we can influence policy, secure funding, improve working conditions, and strengthen the quality and accessibility of care for children and families
Yeah.
in our program. And for me personally, um, Circle has shown me that my voice matters and can influence policy. I wasn't a political person. I think I shared that with you. And so,
I
you
think
know,
so many of us share the comment. So many of us frame our conversation like, I'm not a political person, but everything is political.
it is.
Deciding to do this work,
Yes,
deciding to remain in this work, it's
it
political.
is. It is. And it, you know, and
So I'm going to go back to that question though.
okay.
So when you said I'm not a political person, what were you trying to communicate with that? Because Sandra, I cannot imagine that you didn't speak up. There wasn't ever a time that you didn't speak up when you felt that things were not going well. And so what does that mean that you're not, what did that mean when you said you're not a political person?
So maybe I'm thinking on a higher level,
Mhm.
like policy writing, like actually putting things into place.
Mhm.
You know, I can talk, I can voice my opinion, but to actually have what I say really matter.
Mhm.
You know, so maybe that's how I'm thinking about politics. Because I always thought that maybe somebody else makes the decisions and I just have to follow through with the decision that they make. But it's like, no, Sandra, because you may not like that decision.
Yeah.
So your voice does matter. And I'm learning, I'm still learning that you have collectively, we can get, make changes. We can make life-changing changes.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because you talk about the fact that you're not a political person to now you're sitting on an endowment board that the vision is to shape, to basically reshape the
Hmm.
entire early care system.
Hmm.
Do you like sit with the awe of that? Your transition, have you ever sat down and thought about, wow, I can't believe I'm here doing this? Or is
Yes.
it just like you, Miss Sandra? I just take stuff in stride.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, how did the question I ask is, how did I get here? That's the question I ask. I'm like, God, how did I get here? I didn't ask for this, but it's okay. I'm gonna work with it,
Mhm.
because who he calls, he qualifies. So at some point, he's building me and teaching me. And as I sit on these boards, I'm listening, I'm learning. You support me tremendously, and I even learn from my mistakes because I'm a type of person, if I make a mistake, I don't want to make that same mistake twice. I
Yeah.
want to learn from it, And so, yeah, sometimes I do be like, oh, wow, what am I doing here? And how did I get here? But it's okay.
And And I want to give props also to the work that you're doing with All Our Kin
Hmm.
because you do national. I mean, we talk about you on the endowment board, but you're doing national work and you're speaking nationally. So talk about when you say, "How did I get here?" I'm sure it encapsulates all of
Yeah.
that. So talk about that experience and some of the
Yeah.
work you've
With
done
all I
in that
can.
capacity.
Yeah.
Because you're doing big things, girl.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was, yeah, all I can. Yeah, I've had lots of opportunities with them.
Mhm.
Um, like going to Washington and sitting in the presence of Bernie Sanders and listening to his speech, which was so powerful.
Hmm.
And then I also had the opportunity to speak at, I can't remember the name of the conference,
Hmm.
but it was my first time and it was about 300 people. And I had to share my story about family home childcare and supporting the parents.
Hmm.
Um, and then we were at also, you were there at the research. There was some type of research over at Yale.
Hmm. With Dr. Gilliam.
Yes.
Yeah. There's been so many things, Miss Sandra, that we have been involved in together. And,
Mhm.
you mentioned that you were sitting and listening to Bernie Sanders' speech. And what was that like sitting, going to Washington and listening to like folks that we see on television every day and trying to advocate for them? Again, especially coming from a person who started off saying, I'm not political. That's incredibly political.
I know. It was it was just amazing. I learned from it. I learned that as a Black woman, I can be in any space.
Mm, mm,
I can be in any space, you know? And learning not to be intimidated
yeah.
is, yeah,
Okay. So, Miss Sandra,
yes, ma'am.
if you had the power, and knowing your
Mhm.
trajectory, girl, you may have the power. And we collectively all have the power. But if you had a magic wand that you could just wave and fix, more specifically, Connecticut early care system, what are
Mhm.
some of the things that you would think about doing to put in place that would support parents and providers like yourself to make a much better system going forward than even the one that we have now, knowing that it's much better than what we had before when we just started?
Mhm. Let's see. Okay, so if Connecticut would fully committed to stable long-term funding for early childhood, it would have a profound impact on us as providers and families.
Mhm.
And families would have more stability in their table, secure housing, reliable childcare, which allows parents to work and children to thrive.
Mhm.
So right now, parents are spending thousands and thousands of dollars on childcare.
Yeah.
If we were at the point where we were so stable, the money, we knew without a shadow of a doubt that the monies are going to be there,
Mhm.
that childcare is going to be free for everyone. Parents could take that money that they have invested in early childcare for
Mhm.
these infants, for their infants and toddlers, and use it for further education, like college tuition. Because when you add it up, it's a down payment on a house. If you go some years, it's half payment on a house,
Yeah.
or you could invest it in the child's education for college.
Mhm.
So stability and funding for childcare will help parents to invest in further needs for their life, like housing and education for their children, and also bring bring families out of poverty.
Mm.
You know, people are much happier when they can earn a paycheck, pay their own bills. Nobody likes to really ask for help,
Mhm.
and a lot of parents, they need help, but they're not going to ask for it.
Yeah.
You know, they just do the best they can and get by. But like I said before, it causes stress.
Yeah.
It causes
So
stress.
we talk about it from the lens of a parent. You talked about when you just started this some 15 years ago. 15 years is long, but it's not really that long.
Mm-mm.
And you mentioned how many systems or systems of support has been put in place for providers and parents. So, what advice would you give to a provider who's thinking about starting the journey that you did some 15 years ago?
Okay. The first advice I would give is for her to pray and reflect. You got to make sure this is something you want to do. You need to assess
Why is that important?
because sometimes it might from a perspective, it might look like, oh, childcare, they're making a lot of money. They're charging $350, $400 a head.
Yeah,
Oh, if I get 6 kids, that's this much amount of money, but have no idea what it entails.
yeah,
None whatsoever. The cost, you have a dual responsibility. You have a responsibility as a provider, or educator, and you have a responsibility as a businesswoman.
hmm,
So you got to work twice as hard
yeah,
because even like with family childcare, you can't clock out and leave and have the cleaning people come in and clean, the accountant do your book work, the chef cook your meals. Mm-mm. You have to do it all.
yeah,
Have to do it all. And I don't think they realize that. And you have to have a passion. You have to be passionate. You have to have a passion for the job and patience
yeah.
because you're dealing with a lot of personalities, a lot of personalities, you know, and we can't let our feelings and our emotions and, how we were raised. Because my husband always tell me this, when I be like, oh, how come they didn't do this like this? Or how come he goes, Sandra, everybody wasn't raised like you. I had to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was natural. Some things just were natural, but it's not like that with everybody,
Yeah.
and I had to learn that. So you really have to do your homework. And there's a lot of requirements now. All you needed years ago was a license.
Mm-hmm.
Now you need your CDA, you need your accreditation, you need a degree. It's a continuing thing. You need to continue learning because without knowledge, the people perish. So we have to learn. We have to know how to educate our children. And it's 2026. They're up against things that 20 years ago they weren't up against. Social media, um, all this stuff that is affecting our children, all these distractions, how do we bring them in? How do we bring them in? It's just crazy. And I was thinking as I was looking at this, I was thinking how when we were little, we were able to go outside and play in the street with our neighbors. Nobody bothers us. We could walk to the store down the street and get 5-cent licorice. I wouldn't send my kid to the corner store by herself today. I wouldn't do it. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I don't know how I got there, but
No, I mean, I was talking to another provider that's a part of our network, and she
mhm.
mentioned that, kids nowadays are so different. The
Yes,
kids that were back in the day. And one of the things
yes,
I had to remind her is that not everybody was raised the way that you were raised.
right.
And not everybody has the value that you
No.
have. And so that basically, when we're expecting children to come in with a certain set of values or a certain set of behavior based on those values, it's so different,
It is.
right? And then you cannot do the same things that you used to do some 10 years ago
Right.
children today, because
Right.
some kids are coming in, they don't know even how to function in a setting.
Mhm.
All they do is they just run and run and run and
Mhm.
just tear stuff down. And they'll tell you no, they'll hit you, they'll kick
Yeah.
you, they'll do all of those things.
Yeah.
So the children nowadays and the parents obviously are very different as well. So You mentioned again the dual responsibility of educating the children, and you also mentioned the role of being a business owner. So I know we touched on previously that circle help with some of these things. But can you talk to a new provider coming in? Because as you said, a lot of people think, oh, I can just come in and, it's like I can, I've got six kids, I can charge $400 and then I'm just like banking money. So,
No.
so can you share with folks what are some of the things that people don't think about? You mentioned again that this is not a 9 to 5 clock in, clock out. What are some
Mm-mm.
of the expenses that folks should be thinking
Oh,
about,
yeah.
especially in this iteration of our early care system?
Hmm. Well, there's a lot of expenses. There's your insurance.
Mhm,
Um, there is, you have to have the necessary and proper tools to educate them children,
mhm,
so that's an expense. Just the upkeep of your home, having the space presentable and
mhm,
safe, for the children, having space even in a yard, a backyard,
mhm.
for them to play. Um,
Let's
and
go
it,
back to the upkeep of your home because
mhm,
a lot of people are operating inside their home,
mhm.
but you cannot treat your home just like your home because
No,
again, if something breaks, you really have to fix that right away, right?
yes,
So
yes,
talk about that.
yes. You do have to fix it right away. Um, because of the regulations, the OEC regulations, you wouldn't want the state to come in and something that's broke that needs to be repaired is not repaired. So
Mhm,
you have to always stay on top of what is required of you through the OEC regulations. You have to have your smoke detectors in working order. Your water has to be a certain temperature. And you have to be able now, you need to be able to be comfortable with people coming into your program outside of parents,
mhm,
educational coaches, birth to three, um, nurses, health consultants. We have mental health consultants. You can't just shut these people out because it's all a part of the business that you
mhm.
decided to come into. It's just not, I'm in my home with my kids, don't bother me. It doesn't work like that anymore,
Yeah,
you know. So you have to be willing to share your home with outsiders, but it's all for the benefit of the child.
yeah,
And that's why you should be in the work,
yeah.
And one more thing, Georgia, before we close that I want to stress too is as providers now, self-care, I'm
Mhm,
learning is so, so crucial
yeah,
because you can go through a crisis in your life and you can't shut down.
yeah.
You can't shut down. You want to shut down, but you can't shut down. You know, you
Because
have
it's a
to,
business, right?
yes,
And you're it.
yes,
And the
yes,
parents rely on you.
yes.
And that's the other
More is
side,
at stake here.
Sandra. Yeah, that's the
Yes,
other side of it that people don't think about.
yes, yeah. So you got, take care of yourself, get plenty of sleep, get plenty of rest, and do things outside of the business. Like, sometimes I just go get a hotel just
Wow.
because I'm away from work,
Yeah.
And they don't have to be to Florida. Look, right to Shelton somewhere, you know. Just get me out the house, but it's a it's a rewarding business. Every time I think, oh, maybe another year, it's just like they keep coming, and the children. Yeah, so I don't know.
Miss Sandra, it is always so lovely to speak with you. And I want folks to know, how do they get in touch with you if they're looking for childcare?
Okay. So my email, um, because I don't have a website yet, but
We're gonna have to work on that.
I know we do. I need help with that. Yeah. I need a website, I know. Um, but my email is the best way, motherlylove2@gmail.com.
Can you spell
And
it? motherlyluvtoo@gmail.com. And is there a telephone number that they can
Mm-hmm.
call?
203-909-2403. And I
Okay.
just want to say,
Mhm.
I am licensed for overnight care.
Oh, wow. Can you
Hmm.
talk about that?
Yeah, so and this all stemmed from the business course that we took with you and Joe. Joe said you got to figure out how you can expand and build your income.
Wow.
I was like, I got all this empty space up here. So I applied for a grant, and I'm telling you, when you apply for a grant, if you don't get it the first time, try it again. Don't ever give up, because the women's business development, the first time I didn't, but the second time I did. And so I have a space upstairs that's set up with the beds, the crib, for overnight. Not like 10, 11 till in the morning, not in the middle like 4 to 12 like that, but overnight where the kids would sleep here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely going to share that with Joe because Joseph Williams and he's at the Community Foundation. So I've definitely shared. Joe comes in and he supports us around the business every year. So thank you so very much, Sandra. We look forward to all of your political work, your political speech, your thought thinking in shaping this early care system. We are so grateful to have you. Thank
Thank you for having me, Georgia.
you. Okay.
Okay.
How was that?
Oh, oh God, we got through it.
You did it, Sandra. It was really good. It was great to hear you from the side.
Okay. It was okay. We don't need to edit it and stuff. It
Oh,
was
she'll edit stuff, but she won't edit our conversation. She'll edit where I paused
oh,
with the
okay.
light. But yeah, how did you
Okay.
feel though?
Um, I felt more comfortable than I thought I would.
You sound really
Because
good.
you know me,
Yes.
I'm like be shaking in my boots. But once we start talking,
Yeah.
it makes you get more, I get more comfortable
Yeah.
because it's like you said, it's a conversation.
Conversation. And a
Yeah.
part of me kind of changing up the conversation is so that it doesn't feel rehearsed. And I
Mm-hmm.
know you can talk about yourself and talk about your work. So I have
Mm-hmm.
no problem sort of like asking the questions in different ways. But we got
Yeah.
to all of the questions that you wanted to highlight and
Mm-hmm.
you felt so, it felt so natural. It
Okay.
felt like we were just two people sitting having a conversation, which is what I strive for. And you did really great as well.
Oh, thanks, Georgia.
You did.
Sandra,
Woo.
well, if I may ask, can we clip some of the not just the audio, but some video so that we can put on our website for testimonials? Because what you had to say about your experience with Bernie and even just how the advocacy with Circle is really, really good. Like
Okay.
really good.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that a lot that you mentioned that about how it's helped you have a voice, which is something, we're always trying to strive with Circle and making sure that other people know that
Mm-hmm.
that you have a space to do that.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah, you're
So
welcome.
that's it, Miss Sandra. So we
Okay.
are scheduled to do this in February.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
February. We're gonna have Rosa DeLauro first, and then we're gonna have you next in February. So
Okay. All
but
right.
thanks again, and
Oh,
thanks
you're
for doing this
welcome.
on your break. And I know how rest and self-care is important. So I'll
Yes.
keep you here much longer, girl, and we'll be
Okay.
Saturday.
All right.
You are listening to Inside Voices on WNHHLP 103.5 FM.